Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. I'm your host, Sybil Amuti, and I can't wait for you to hear all of the Great Girlfriend magic on today's show. So without further ado, grab something great to drink, grab your pen and your paper, and get ready for this week's episode. Happy Wednesday, great girlfriends. Happy Wednesday. I am so excited because spring feels like it's coming close. I mean, it's like close. And I'm in LA, so we're getting 80-degree days, and I couldn't be happier. And speaking of warm days and the perfect climate and community to introduce someone new to you, I wanted to bring on a guest today, Twanna Harris, who is the founder of League of Industry Moms, to talk a bit about building community, understanding the power of having a great tribe, what she has learned as a community builder, and some of the things that we all need to know as women who are out here collaborating and searching for our like-minded people. So, Miss Tawana, how you doing today?
I am good. I am good. How are you, Sybil?
I'm so good. It's so good to have you on. You look beautiful, by the way.
Thank you
I'm
so much.
feeling that hair. I'm feeling the hair color. It's all in my realm of color. I love it. I love it.
It was supposed to be something completely different, but you know what they said, you took a cheap route, you got some dark stuff. If I go in with this ash, it's gonna turn orange. And I was like, you know what, just do what you know what to do, and I'll like course correct later on. So like you just look out. It's gonna get lighter and lighter and lighter
It
because I
happened to me.
need to minimize these grades. Like it's it's a whole effort to like minimize the periodic touch-ups with the grades. So that's what it's all about.
I had the same situation where I was like, okay, this wasn't what we talked about, but the grays are gone. So I'll do this for the moment. And then when I come back like bleach blonde, you'll know like she's back. Because there is no
Yep.
stronger force in this world than a gray hair. No stronger force.
Nothing. It's it's kind of sort of like, having kids. It's rebellious. It doesn't listen. It doesn't matter what you do, how much like
Mhm.
curating you do to the process, it's not going to behave. So
No,
like, yeah,
those grays are gone gray. They are gonna gray.
they are gonna gray. They are gonna gray. Unrelenting. They are
Yeah.
going to.
Tell us a little bit about who you are. Give us a little bit of your story.
Okay. So I would say, it's always a challenge when you say this because I'm like, is that the interview part for a job or is that like, but for me, I'm a country girl who loves the city lights. I kind of sort of grew up in a space to where, I was always confined by boundaries and dare I say, like forced to live in a square. And I've always been the one fighting the boundaries, fighting to say, I'm not doing that. And so, as a kid, I grew up, I did summer camps in Atlanta, fell in love with it because I had never seen Black people excelling and Black people thriving. And so I fell in love with the city. I said, you know what? When I grow up, that's where I want to live. And I came here I went to undergrad at Florida State, came here for grad school. That kind of sort of thrust me into this corporate space. I've been in corporate marketing on both the brand and the agency side for the last 25 years until 3 years ago when I said, you know what, I'm done with all this. I'm done with, kind of sort of restricting my voice, not having a voice, not being able to speak truth to power. And I felt like we were just at a state, post George Floyd, post COVID, we were at a state to where we needed to be able to speak truth. We needed to be able to align with each other in a really transparent and authentic way. And so I won't delve any further than that, just to say I'm on my own. I'm doing things that are directly impactful to me, and I want to be able to create impact no matter what I do.
Mm. So I hear a very purpose-driven woman who has always been committed to impact. And sometimes we get, and great girlfriends listening can relate, you operate inside of boxes that don't allow you to show the fullness of who you are. And then you get to that point where you're like, I either continue to shrink in this space or I pivot and I broaden the reality of how I show up in the world.
That's it. It's like
Yeah.
that aperture, on a camera. Like you got to change it up a little bit so that they can see a little bit more broadly, like not only who you are, but like what's the context in the background, right? And I feel like we sometimes have to like shrink that. We have to hide it.
Mhm.
Um, and even if it's in the camera, we're supposed to say it's something that it's not. And I'm just,
Mm.
I think we just get exhausted by that because it constantly becomes a narrative of us minimizing who we are and
Mhm.
what true value we bring into the equation.
Hmm. You know, I think about that. We did an episode. Oh my gosh, it's been 10 years now, the Great Girlfriends podcast. Whoa, whoa. So
Congratulations.
I say that to say, I go way back to an episode that we did in 2015, probably, number 11, which was called No More Shrinking. And
Yeah.
it was like the number one episode for years, for years, for years, for years. And it was the number one topic, it was the number one conversation because so many women related to the idea of there being a suppressed version of who they were, or like a shrunken version of who they were, inside of boxes, relationships, friendships, communities, whatever it was. And so the big question that I started to ask in response to that, probably even 2 years ago, was because sometimes people get stuck and they go, "Well, I feel like I was shrinking in this space." What did you feel was the shrunken part? Like, what was the missing piece? So I'll ask you, as you stepped out of your box 3 years ago, what were the parts that you were shrinking that have now been fully exposed for you?
I think the question of what I didn't shrink is
Mm.
probably even more applicable to me. I literally felt like I had to put on a mask every day I went into these environments,
Wow.
and so I never forget like literally getting back to my car one day and literally just crying and sobbing and saying, I don't like this, like I can actually be myself. Like I had to give myself a whole talk. So I would drive up into my parking space and would have a whole conversation around, okay, like I need you to keep Twanna in the car.
Mm.
And I got to put on this mask and I just need you to align with this for like 8 hours, sis. Can we just get 8 hours? Right. And it was like the pep talk around who I had to present myself as, what parts of myself I needed to leave in the car, which was the vast majority of them. Um,
Mm.
and then when I would get back to the car at the end of the day, it would be this like, convening back together and being like, okay, how did you do? And sometimes it would be a tremendous success. Sometimes it would be an utter failure. And I think it was just like me wrestling with like, how long do you want to put up this game?
Yeah.
And I knew intuitively that I didn't want to do it, but you start to get those golden, handcuffs and you get used to the benefits and the paycheck and all of the things, but it's just like what happens when I put this level of energy into things that are going to be truly transformational, that are going to really build community, that are going all the things that were important to me, right? That were really going to lead to, dare I say, like more liberation. I know it's a big term that we're all struggling with right now, or thriving towards, but I think we don't spend enough time like really focusing on what that truly means. What does it really mean to be free? What does it really mean to own your voice? And if as we are getting into these current times to where, everything is shutting down around, you can't say this, you can't be this, you can't do this. Now we're at a new phase of like, how are we showcasing examples for other, especially like our younger women, particularly to emulate? Like they don't have a model. Like either it's off the cuff and you're saying whatever and you're getting locked up in a different country, or
Mhm.
you're trying to figure out like, okay, can I go this way? Can we get a little bit closer to the truth? Maybe not too much to the left, definitely not too much to the right. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's another phase to where I feel like once again, as women, particularly in women of color, we're having to like lead this national conversation about around what's next and
Mhm.
how do we survive and how do we move and how do we thrive? And then how do we showcase to the rest of the world how to do this too? And
Yeah.
so to literally now be in a space to where like I'm having those conversations, but I say, you know what? Let me get some strength behind this conversation. Like there are some complete, and dare I say, like, I don't mean to like use profanity, but I gotta go there. Like there's some complete badasses in this space
Yeah.
that I'm just like, no, I'm a convener. I like to get around great people and say, let's all talk about this because I can say things till I'm blue in the face, but it's not until 18 other women say it that now it has credibility. Now it has validation because it's not just a siloed vacuum in a vacuum
Hmm.
type of conversation. It's actually bigger and broader.
No, it's so true. It's like it is
the volume of the voice of the thing that you need to say. And you know, and you're still gonna be blue to on some days because you're like, y'all not loud enough. I thought we were all we got to get loud. So sometimes you'll still be blue, but you'll know you're saying the thing that you need to say instead of being blue for somebody else's message that doesn't line up with your free self, your liberated self. So with
Yeah.
now you curating community, I always shout out and want to honor and recognize community builders because I'm a convener. I love to bring people together. For me, it's been the sake of building friendship, building those relationships that are long-standing or short-standing, whatever that experience is meant to be. But I love to bring community together, and I love and I believe that friendship is a fixture for me. I also believe that inside of friendship, there are these other small, I won't say small, but powerful subsets of relationship that happens. Motherhood is one of them that I'm just like, when we see each other, it's just like the fist goes in the air, like, I see you, girl.
Right. Completely.
Completely. So when I see you building community, League of Industry moms, I'm like, I already know it's about to be a force. I know whatever moms decide to do and say will get done and will get said in the most effective and impactful ways because that's what mothers do, just get it done. I understand you saying that this is a group of women that are undeniably amazing. So I want to know why not League of Industry women? Why League of Industry moms? Why that subset and what put that on you? What what was the driving force behind you developing this community?
Well, okay, so I'm trying to figure out like where to start with that conversation, but um in a nutshell, I became a mother of an NFL player 6 years ago, and
Okay.
that's my oldest son. And when he got drafted, we were like, okay, we're gonna handle this thing and we're just gonna move through it. We didn't know what to expect. Like, there's no guidebook, there's no blueprint, there's no manual. It's just like, hey, your son's been drafted. Um,
Congrats, by the way.
oh, thank
That's
you. Thank
major.
you.
Yeah.
It is major, and we're so proud of him. But at the end of the day, it comes with a lot, and I would say that the motivation behind the community was, and I didn't know this at the time, like it took me years to really understand this because I'm still working a full-time job and I'm traveling to see him. And I got these other kids that are graduating from college. And it's just a lot of stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
But then I also started to witness things like the distance between he and I. And that began to get loud. And not only loud between he and I, but also impacting the rest of the family unit, because people would see that I was kind of pulling back, because I think sometimes when you're in relationships with people, the more invested you are into their life, the more expectation you have on the other side. And
Mhm.
not necessarily expectation from, okay, of course, the narrative around mothers of NFL players in particular, or pro athletes in general, is that, everybody's waiting for their sons to buy them a house. I have a
Mhm.
house. I
Mhm.
work full-time job. I actually make a good salary. I've been in corporate America. I have my MBA. We can go on and on and on, right? So that wasn't the narrative with me, but it's just like the closeness that we have in our relationship, the connection, what I had hoped would be closer, it actually started to get more distant.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I started, and this is like 4 or 5 years in, I started talking with a couple of other parents. And if you know anything about this circle, nobody shares, nobody's vulnerable, nobody can trust anybody.
Right.
And so nobody talks. And it's not until I started talking, because I'm an open book, right? Um, and I started talking about like, it's been really difficult because I feel more distance between me and my son. I feel like there's a lack of trust in the conversation, and I'm not sure where it's coming from because I've only made sacrifices and compromises for him. Like I've never taken money from, what I'm saying? Like it's not
Yeah.
that type of scenario. And so you're trying to figure out like, what is the issue?
Mhm.
And as I started talking to other moms, I realized that I wasn't alone and I thought I was. And that's the reason why none of the other moms share anything because we feel like we're the only ones because
Yeah.
you're a professional athlete's mom. You're supposed to be smiling. You're supposed to be carrying like the coolest, cutest handbag. You're supposed to be fly. You know what I'm saying? Like you're supposed to. The narrative is that you're supposed to represent all this stuff. And
Yeah.
the reality is that you're living probably a complete untruth, right?
Mhm.
The narratives are they're prevalent, but they're so false. We a lot of these women are actually behind this the strength, the silent architects behind their son or daughter's success. And
Yeah.
and what's interesting is that they're doing it in a selfless way because they're never coming on the stage, they're never demanding the spotlight. They're literally very comfortable in the dark. But
Hmm.
in the dark, there's a silence that represents our voices and quite frankly our feelings to
Hmm.
where it's like, okay, I'm gonna go. So just let me back up for a second.
Hmm.
24, 22 years of helping this kid get to this stance. And the minute they get there, it's like, okay, mom, you go sit over here on this shelf. And when my life literally gets too much for me to handle, then I'll come back and
Then
get
I'll
you.
call. Oh my gosh, I
In the
can't.
meantime, I'm gonna go get with this other little girl,
Yeah, I got
and
a
then
whole
the
nother
next
team of
girl, and
people,
then
and
and then
mm,
my boys, and like we're gonna do trips and we're gonna do this. And it's just like, yeah, you
mm.
just sit there until I'm done.
I'll let you
And
know when I need you again.
And then as soon as the biggest catastrophe comes, it's like, hey, how you doing, mom? And it gets to the point to where you're so good at deciphering, oh hell, what happened now? Right? It's
Mhm.
never like just, hey mom, I was thinking about you, just wanted to say I love you. Like there's none of that.
Yeah.
And when I started talking to some of the moms, and I was like, you start to recognize that this has been a well-intentioned strategy that sometimes starts as early as middle school.
Wow.
There's nobody else that is a part of this conversation that can hear the fast talking manager, the
Hmm.
slick agent, and can be like, something about this don't feel right, right? And so
Hmm.
what they learned early on, and I've talked to like agents that have now become attorneys that said, when I was an agent, the mother was the toughest person to deal with. Now that I'm a lawyer, she's like the best. She's the biggest advocate, right? Because we're on the same side.
Yes.
So I think, being early in this process, understanding the power imbalance that happens, understanding who has their best interest,
Hmm.
you start to witness how much your son is being turned against you as early as middle school, high school, because that's when you start to get into these kickback circles, which means that I'm coach. If I introduce you to so and so, when he gets that contract, I'm
Hmm.
getting something. And then this guy's
Yes.
getting something. And so the whole entire circle of people around your kid, whether it's, and these are typically the industries that are adjacent to athletics. And I
Mm.
see, and some of the moms that we talk to are actually seeing the exact same thing on the entertainment side.
Wow.
So, you think about the 360 deals, there's a lot of that going on to where like if we all come in and close this deal together, we all get paid,
Oh, yeah,
right? It
exactly.
goes back to like Ocean's 11. Let's go and rob this casino, and then we
Yeah.
all get.
We all take a split. Yeah.
What's happening with
Oh.
our kids is that everybody's making money off of our kids, and sadly, they've already built in this trust and this collective effort to drive a sense of distrust amongst the people who aren't getting paid, the people who really have the kids' best interest. And it's just a dynamic. And so I said, listen, we could sit here in silence and suffer and continue to suffer and have hits to our, relationships and the friction within our families, or we can drive a more collective, action to say, how do we get around this? What are the best practices? How do we crowdsourcing like our genius and our, cultural knowledge around just building community and aligning and loving on each other?
Mhm.
And so the first thing that I noticed is that we all shared very similar experiences. The minute I would start talking on the other side of the phone, another mom would be like, "Oh my God, that was exactly the conversation I had last week." There's been a few conversations to where the son or the daughter's been in the room and they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't realize I was doing that." So it's a situation that's connected to these industries that we just don't know. And
Hmm.
so it's important that if we want to save our families, and we want to save the legacies that are being built for our communities. We want to literally be able to protect the generational wealth that our kids are making for so many of us. If our kids didn't make this money, it literally would, the minute our kids begin to make that money, it completely changed the trajectory of the wealth building conversation for our family.
Yeah, for
So if we
sure.
want to maintain and protect that, we've got to get involved.
My goodness, it's something that I have a 16-year-old football player. So I obviously am like my ears are completely attuned to everything you're saying. And I understand even as you start talking about the middle school dynamic, but more importantly, across so many different industries where without any understanding of what you're entering into or how far you're going to go, you don't know until you're immersed. And then you're looking around. And like you said, if there's siloed communication or no communication, you do feel alone. So now you have this collective of women who are conversing. And really starting to come up with strategies to help support one another. What does that look like for you this year? Because I know your launch is recent. So
Yeah.
your kickoff was
Yeah.
like, yeah, congrats, by the way. That's
Thank you.
amazing. Yeah.
Thank you.
What does
Yeah,
that look
we
like for you for programming?
so, the first program was to actually do the launch, which was like the big announcement to the world, right? And I felt like during the launch, we needed to have a conversation. Everything was free because, again, you come into these spaces and everybody's asking, everybody's
Yeah.
trying to get close to not only your kid, but your money, right?
Yeah.
So it was really important for me that we got partners that literally align with us bringing this to the table,
Mhm.
at no cost. So nobody had a hang up of any way, shape, or form. But the conversation that was on the actual panel was by Carrie Shahidi,
Oh,
Yara
yeah.
Shahidi's mother,
Yeah.
Shatelia Irving, Kyrie Irving's mom,
Mhm.
as well as Michelle Brown, which is Jalen Brown's mom. And then we also incorporated like a little bit of an impromptu conversation of like the journey to the Super Bowl, and that was with DeAndre Hopkins' mom. And
Oh,
so all four of those shared like different frames around what is involved in this journey, right? And I won't get into big detail, but it was literally the same exact narrative over and over and over, but then four different ways around how we approached it. Some of the experiences in our lives that allowed us to approach it a little differently and allowed those experiences to weigh into how we approached. And so everything that I had said I wanted to build in terms of saying, how are we crowdsourcing this to where we're bringing different things to the table? That's exactly what happened. And so I wanted to demonstrate what's happening. But moving forward, we are actually putting together not only partners, but programs that can educate these women. Because the number one thing that we said we need more than anything is number one, a trusted circle to where when we say something, we don't have to worry about it getting out into the media.
right.
Um, and
Right.
so it's really important. Like, I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, but I think I have to kind of sort of mention it now. Trust is the number one factor. And so
Mhm.
we have to know that there's a sense of trust. If you're coming into this group and you want to compare the size of square footage of your home, the amount of money you're paying on your car, this is not the community for you. And we're okay with saying that. Like you can just go, exit left. I'm good,
Right, right, right.
right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Because this is a community around women who are trying to navigate keeping their families together, but then above and beyond that, how are we growing together, right? Um, And so with the programmatic element, the number one thing beyond like just the wellness, the holistic wellness of our kids is really how are we building that trusted, vetted circle of people that we surround them with? Because that is probably the single most impactful process that we can actually incorporate when it comes to protecting this community.
Mm. So speaking of that, because that's not just an element for you all, that's an element for every community build is developing trust, developing that connection. But what are some of those other key pillars that you have found important as you start refining and defining what the league will look like for this community? What are some of the other pillars next to trust?
Yeah, it's trust. It's, integrity, which is very close to trust, but like just sisterhood, fellowshipping. These women are, the majority of them are, I would say, mid 40s to mid 50s, right? So if you just kind of take that little sliver of like who we are, many of us are going through life changes, right?
Yes,
It's hot
yes.
one minute, it's cold the next. Like we're going through a lot, which also impacts us emotionally and
Right.
mentally and physically, right? And so it's really about like saying many of us have gotten to the point to where our kids are somewhat successful, right? And so meaning 4, 5, 6 years in, right? And so we've done like a lot of the curation on the front end to say, okay, they understand the direction that we're going. So we're going to level up a little bit and take like a little bit of an eagle's eye view. But
Mm.
then what's the rest of my world look like?
Mhm.
I've put all this time, I mean, decades
Yeah.
into this child, these children. Now
Hmm.
what? I'm at a point like we're not necessarily saying we're having midlife crises, but we have gotten to that point to where we made a lot of sacrifices and compromises in our careers, in our personal lives, so on and so forth. So, like, what's next for me?
Hmm.
Is it entrepreneurship? Is it another job? Is it traveling? Is it self-care? We hear all this conversation about our younger sisters talking about a soft life. I don't know if we ever will see a soft life, but
Yeah.
I think we're striving for it, right? What does that mean for us,
Yeah.
right? Where does mental health, physical health, like all of that come into play? Our bodies are transforming every single day. We're getting
Mhm.
literally handed a different dynamic every day. Our hair is thinning, we're graying, like all the things, right? So I don't need the same conversation that my younger sister needs. I need a conversation that's about, okay, what you do about that gray? How do
Mhm.
you not spend, you know, thousands of dollars every year on just not graying? You know,
Right.
what are
Yes.
some of the choices? But then also like my body's starting to stiffen up. Like
Uh-huh.
what are some of the responses that I need to do? So I think it's a whole entire white space that's literally been a void.
Yes.
So much of the programming, the product offerings, all the things, like nobody's actually looking at us as like we're the architects, we're the
Yeah.
builders, we're the founders of our son and daughter's foundations, we're their business partners. We're doing all of this now. Who comes to help us in the process?
Yeah.
And
And
that's
I feel
where
to a
we're really.
degree like people say, okay, thank you, bye. We have a product. Bye, mom. Like, yeah, and then it's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute, not so fast. There's still so much about your story that is a fact. Our children are a big part of our story. But you having multiple children mean there's so many facets to your story that are still being nurtured and still deserve to be appreciated. Then there's the you-ness of all this. So it's like I am a mom and I do have these things, but there's also me. And I love that there's in the sisterhood, there is a reminder to not forsake that, to value that, to
I
prioritize.
mean, I think our younger sisters have shown us that when the world taps and literally aligns against us, you start to see movements like um, Black Girl Magic.
Yeah,
You start to hear the affirmations like, hey, I
yep,
know the world is not going to tell you this. I know these men are not going to tell you this, but we're going to cheer each other on.
that's right.
And I think that we're starting to see that when it comes to an older demographic too. Our cheer is just a little bit different, right? But I also believe that as we continue to cheer each other on and say, hey, sis, you might want to try this estrogen treatment, you might want to do this, that,
Yeah.
and the other. But it's also a part of like, how are we showing up for this younger demographic? How are we showing up in a way that says, you know what? Maybe in my generation, there was always a friction between like the son and whoever he chose in life and the mom. We
Mhm.
got to get past all of that. At the end of the day, our future generations, our grandchildren are probably more important than anything else. Once you get to this stage, your kids are your kids and they're going to have their life and almost shut you out. But now you're looking at the next generation. Like, who am I important to? I'm important to these grandkids. But now that I have a son, I have to realize that, like, there's some dynamics culturally that happen in our community to where 90% of the time that kid is probably going to be closer to his maternal grandmother than the paternal grandmother. And so
Yeah.
now you gotta get your mind right. You have got to start to figure out like, how do I navigate this a little differently? I can't be at odds with her because then that's going to put me at odds with my son. So how are we preparing ourselves for those moments, right? So nobody talks about the mental, the emotional strain of relationships, of family growth, all of those things. So that's a lot of the programming that we plan to incorporate. We plan to do excursions. We plan to start putting some of these women on speaking panels because,
Yeah.
like I said before, I think when Shatelia Irving mentioned that she became Kyrie's agent when her and her husband actually split. So
Mm,
it's like I'm just getting used to like us not being together and not
right.
this unified family unit. And now you're throwing me back into the mix. Like, what does that look like? But one of the things that I just felt this as from sister to sister, I was like, she's so dope. She said that she told Kyrie that like the world is going to evolve. Your basketball career is going to evolve. The women around you are going to evolve. Like all your money's going to evolve. But
Mhm.
one thing that won't evolve is my love for you. And you
Mhm.
have me for a lifetime. And I was like, ooh, like that's from a stepmom.
Good.
As a mom, I felt that. You know what I'm saying? Like I felt that. And I felt like she came to the table, not as a stepmom, but like, I'm
Mhm.
here for you. Your mom has transitioned away from this earth. I'm
Mhm.
here. You got me for life. Your dad or not, you got me for life. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of us mothers are trying to communicate to our kid is that when the career is over, a lot of people going to bounce. A lot of
Yes.
people not
Yeah.
going to return your call, but you got me. I'm
Mhm.
not going anywhere, you
Mhm.
know? And so those are some of the important parts that I can sit here and generate a whole bunch of conversation about this myself, but it literally is the value in our community is hearing from the different moms.
Yeah.
Another mom doing the draft last year, I'll say this and then we can move on. But one of the things she said is the hardest moment about the draft was two things. One, I'm sitting here and I'm watching all the guys like dap each other up and everybody's having a good time and eating great food. But she said, but I'm the only one in the room thinking, what happens when they never call his name? What do I say to this kid who this is his dream, his
Yeah.
whole life?
Yeah.
And
Woo!
when nobody calls his name, he's going to be looking at one person, and that's me.
That's her.
And,
Yeah.
and then the second part of it is the same woman was like, when my son got drafted, what people don't understand is we take our kids through the ABCs in life. When they get drafted, they skip A through J and they're right at K.
Oh my goodness.
But
Yeah.
you're responsible for the fact that he should know A through J.
Right.
And there's
Right.
one single entity, not one, that's educating him on A to J. But the entire world is preparing to blame him
For
on the
not.
fact that he jumped to K and he wasn't prepared, he wasn't educated, he wasn't ready. So that is our jobs is while our kids are reading their playbooks, they're watching their film, they're handling their practices and just trying to figure out their identity of young adulthood. Now, moms, even if you choose not to be a manager or an agent, you still can help to be a helpmate to your child before they actually meet their actual helpmate in life.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There's so much that um you don't understand as a parent. You don't know it until you reach B and you're like, okay, it's time to learn B, time to learn. And then I feel like from middle to high school, the college forward, it just accelerates. It's quickly, yeah, it's just the on-the-job training just accelerates. And what is most important about what you just spoke about is having a connective tissue of sisterhood and also creating blueprints that allow for people such as myself, other moms, other women who are listening and navigating dynamics and trying to understand what you're feeling. Because we don't always understand. We feel things, we don't always understand our feelings. We don't
Right.
always know how to manage what we feel. We don't always know if they're valid. But to have and see that there are women who are willing to embrace these conversations and have the complex conversations in a way that allows for people to respect their feelings and then also have a blueprint that allows for the next group to navigate all of the circumstances or choices that come our children's way and our family's way, that's important. That's very important. It's also important, I think, for which I think is probably, I don't know if this surprised you, but I'm like, were you surprised that there were so many women who were like, yes, I need this? Did you,
It
yeah,
was because again, when you're going through this, you literally feel like it's just you. Like
yeah, yeah,
everybody else seems to love on their families. It doesn't there doesn't seem to be distance in the family. Everybody seems to just everything's just so harmonious. And then when you start getting to the moms, like I can't tell you how many moms I've met with one on one, and we haven't even been able to get through a first meeting without tears,
mm,
without it's like, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for recognizing what I was going through. Thank you for reaching out and thank you for building this community, right? And I've gotten that from so many moms. And so as I was building this and doing like the customer discovery to make sure that this was like legitimate and it just wasn't some sort of faction of my imagination. I started meeting with moms and I kept hearing over and over and over. And then I kept hearing different things too, which added more context to like what does the programming need to look like? What are some of the types of engagements that we need to have? And so year one, we're literally just stepping in soft. We're going to start doing some virtual programming, but then also we're actually trying to do at least quarterly meetups. So we're
Mhm.
going to be doing our next major event. It's going to be during Mother's Day here in Atlanta.
Mhm.
So there's just different things that we're going to keep doing so that we are producing content that can reach the masses,
Mhm.
because that's really important. I think those little sound bites here and there will be like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
they should have been a part of that
Yep.
conversation.
Where were they? How can I?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're basically utilizing some of our events to like really create a sense of awareness around the fact that we even exist because there's no resource.
Yeah.
Trust me, I literally made a ton of outreach, and there's a tremendous amount of resources for women who
Mhm.
are wives and girlfriends.
Okay. I want to jump back into Felicia Jones, though. So you were saying,
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, she actually negotiated like a historic deal with the NFL, like the highest deal
Mhm.
ever in history at the time, which was like 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, And if you think about like kind of sort of like the narrative that hit the media headlines, it was like these moms are distractions. They need to stay in their lane. She's going to completely ruin this child's career, so on and so forth. And I think a lot of that is because the narrative is that somebody else was supposed to be negotiating that.
Mhm.
Somebody else was supposed to be benefiting from that, commission,
Yeah.
right? And this is a woman who, to my knowledge, did not have a degree or work experience in that particular area.
Wow.
Right. And
Yeah.
so now, as we're thinking about like in the last 10 years, you think about the Rich Paul rule that says, an agent they have to be degreed and they have to be certified and this, that, and the other. She literally took it upon herself. This is what I hear. She took
Mhm.
it upon herself to educate herself in that particular area
Yeah.
and really be ready to negotiate that deal. And what we're starting to see, you look at her, you look at Jason Weaver's mom, who literally was
Mhm.
like, "Hey, Disney, keep the $2 million. Let me tell you how this is going to work. Give me 150 and
Mhm.
give him a lifetime equity deal around his royalties,
Yes.
right?" So there's a couple of themes that are coming into play. And I like don't let me move too far without giving props to like Jason Tatum's mom, who's like, "Hey, I know you got a $400 million deal, but you're not going to touch that. You can go play with your endorsement money,
Yeah.
but that's for my great, great, great grandchildren." So what you're seeing is a
Yeah.
new narrative that you're not seeing a lot of media highlight around it. But I think once we start to elevate some of these narratives, we will start to understand that like there's value in playing the long game. And we're
Mhm.
coming out at the middle and high school level. Exploitation and extraction is coming at these younger kids at a much younger rate, and it's actually impacting another demographic of young women who now are in their 30s with these young kids and
Yes.
don't like are trying to balance like I got younger kids, I
Mhm.
have whole career. I don't have time to educate myself on this
Yeah.
NIL stuff, but maybe there's some little tactics, or maybe there's just another mom that they can say, "Hey, can you just get on the phone with me
Yeah.
and talk me through?" They are trying to push me around a 30%, commission rate. And I can get on the phone and say, "Listen, I'm not here to say if they're worth it or not worth it. What I can tell you is that in the NFL, the highest percentage an agent can take of your contract is 3%."
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And that is union mandated. Right. And so there's just a lot of conversations that when you get into this space, you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know what you
Yeah.
don't know. So just being around these women and just shooting
Yeah.
just talking,
Yeah.
we're learning from each other and really being able to not only share that information, but crowdsource it and share it with other mothers who might be needing that same information.
That is so good. And it is, it's so good. And when Tyler sent me the link and I was reading about everything that was happening, I'm like, this is going to be such an expansive resource portal. It's going to be more of an explosive space, I think, than you even recognize now. I know that there is this beginning space. It's like, yes, it's happening, but there are so many industries that moms from different industries that are going to come pouring in and either wanting to volunteer information, find support, have advocacy. just have that connection and just feel like I'm seen. Sometimes the best gift that we can give to people is just, I see you. I see
I
you.
see you, but I value you. I
Yeah.
respect you.
Yeah.
And in our space, sis, I love you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there's gotta
Authentically.
really, honestly and
Yeah.
truly, like I think that we're at that stage to where when we start thinking about community, and which is what I love so much about like your podcast and your community, is that people don't understand like connection is a human need.
Oh my goodness.
Literally just is a human need that we have to have. And so particularly, especially with women, right? It's just like we talk, our male counterparts don't, and
Right.
that's a lot of reason why they kind of sort of leave and transition from this world with a lot of the traumas that they have because they don't let it go. I will tell anybody, especially like my husband, like I'm venting all the time. I'm
Yes.
probably talking too much, but you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not carrying around this tension because there was somebody willing to help me carry the load,
Yeah.
you
They
know, and
die earlier as
say it
well.
again.
They die earlier, not only like you were saying about
Yeah.
men, alone, right?
Mhm.
One thing about men, when their spouses die, they tend to die what's considered alone. But when their spouses die, they still die in community. They
Yeah.
still find a way to create a new nucleus.
Yeah.
Like to your point, having a nucleus around your life, the things that you value is important for every single human being. And it's
Absolutely.
healing. And it's one of those things that I think I can say for a fact, I think that a lot of times our friend circles are in response to a lack of something that we see when we enter a new season, right? Because when you become a mom, you're like, where are the mothers? Wife, you're like, where are the wives? Professional industries, whatever those sectors are, we find ourselves going, where are the others like me in this space who are moving in the way that I'm moving, that can understand me and speak my shorthand, where I can, where you can have that connection. So that's the power of you building out this particular space where all the moms were going, where's the mom? And then someone had to say, you know what? We're more powerful than we may even be honored as. And also to your point earlier, you made the point about Felicia Jones having that large deal and it's sort of being spoken, the mom should stay in her place. No one ever says it to the agent. Everybody's okay when the agent makes all the money. No one ever says it to the lawyers. No one,
Nobody even says anything when the agent screws up the money. Or
thank you.
and I
No one
use the
says put them in their
agent like
place.
anybody within that
Anyone who's
space.
brokering that deal, yeah, no one ever
Yeah.
says it. So it is
No.
it is audacious to say that a mother has a place of belonging. And quite frankly, I belong wherever my kids are. That's
And that is the one thing that we said, when they say stay in my lane, there's no lane that belongs to me more than this lane. And I will say this as a last piece. Whether you're in corporate or, so many of us have navigated corporate or, hospitals, wherever you show up,
yeah.
we know and we've been taught the last thing you bring up in an interview is that you have children.
Hmm.
So for the vast majority of most of us professionally, until we got into the job and got really seated and comfortable in the job, we
Yeah.
never even mention our children,
Yeah.
right? For me, it is so liberating for the first time in my life to build something that where I can actually come to the table 100% myself and talk
Yes.
about I'm coming as a mother. And that is my value proposition. I intuitively and innately understand this particular role better than anybody else that, I can be in the circle with. So we're here together. We're here to support, to encourage, to motivate, empower. All the words, it's all positive. We're not here to chastise, to criticize, none of that. We all make mistakes. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
But together we can say, sis, that's okay. That was a rubber ball.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a crystal ball. Let me show you, make sure that you never drop that crystal ball, that you never let that one fall. So all of the things that we learned in corporate, we're now bringing that back into our families. We're bringing that into our communities. We're bringing that into the conversation about our generational wealth building. And
Yeah.
we're not playing games with it. So
I love
to take a
that.
position of power to say, we are locking elbows, we're going across that finish line together. I'm excited about it.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I see it. I get it. And I think it's so important. And I'm very happy that you have decided to take the lead on bringing this to the world with such authenticity, because that is something when you build in community, the integrity of the community needs to be preserved. And I can hear you saying, this is what we're not. We are certain of who we are. The
Yeah.
negativity is not welcome here. This is this is not the space for the comparison or the competition. This is the space
It's too
where,
much. It's too much
yeah,
out in the world right
yeah,
now. Like, why?
yeah.
You know, I may be, my son is not even in the same caliber of athletics as a Kyrie, as a Jalen. But
Hmm.
like people, when they ask me, like, what gave you the audacity to do this? And I said, because I know, it's almost like I love anything with Liam Neeson, right? And I will forever remember his quote on Taken. And he always says, I have a certain set of skills, and when I find you, I will whatever, right?
Hmm.
And for me, it's like I have a certain set of skills. I've been in marketing. I've always been a community builder. I came from philanthropy. I've always loved and wanted to make sure that everybody and all the problems in the world were resolved. And I'll never, be able to do that. But I'm able to bring in my marketing expertise, my experiential piece, the storytelling, the philanthropy. I'm able to bring all of that together in a way that now helps people and
Yeah,
helps a group of women that everybody's got their eye on them.
yeah,
They're not giving them any resources. They're not giving them a spotlight. We get
yeah.
drafted the same time that our kids get drafted, but we don't get a check.
Mm,
We
mm,
just get
mm.
to roll with all the emotional roller coaster, but nobody's addressing that. And so now I'm like, hey, corporations, we're over here. And we can actually do you some good because you get proximity to our sons and daughters, but at
Mhm.
the same time, you're actually addressing the support system that's behind them, the support system that's making all of this big machine move and run, And so as we start to see it, there's just unlimited capability because what you're starting to see now is it's not so much LeBron's mom. It's now you got Savannah coming right down the pike. And now, not only is she now a wife and it's different, but she's now a mother
Yeah.
whose kid is being criticized, who
Hmm.
she has to hold up his emotional and his mental, not saying that LeBron doesn't, but like
Yeah. But it falls
intuitively,
on
the
mom.
mother,
Yeah.
you're the one he's going to cry to because he's got to man up for dad. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? You're the one who's going to say, it's not fair. They're not even giving me a shot, mom. Blah, 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 blah. And I mean, you got Lala Anthony, you got Pat Smith, you got a whole entire community of people who've been in this space in one capacity and now
Yes.
having to now pivot and
Different hat.
operate to another capacity. I think Carmelo's talking about how do you talk to a 17-year-old about taxes? Like
Yeah.
it's a big conversation and we've got to have those conversations. So I'm thrilled about where we are, but I think even more so, I'm thrilled about where we're going and the opportunity that lies before us.
Hmm. You're filling in gaps for sure. For sure. There's so many, and there's a lot of work that you have you have in your hands. All for the greater good though. Where can our great girlfriends learn more
Okay.
about the League of Industry Moms, possibly plug in. Maybe there are industry moms or they know an industry mom. I'm actually thinking of people as we've been talking, like, oh, I know someone who needs to.
Tag them on Instagram. So League of
Okay.
Industry Moms is our handle on Instagram as
Uh-huh.
well as our website. And so we're consistently building out more, connectivity, but those are our primary two places right now.
Mhm.
And so like plug in, tag a mom, get them more engaged, let them know about the community. We're going to be doing a lot of really interesting things. We go to Cannes every year. We go to Martha's Vineyard every year. So we're going to start to amplify these conversations because those conversations don't exist in a lot of those spaces, right?
Yeah.
But our moms are there,
Mm.
and they're sometimes they're in a different capacity. But I think not only could we reach them, but there's a lot of other moms that are there with their children who are
Right.
exploring some of these journeys, these pathways, and there's a lack of information. And right now, with the conversations around the way this world is moving, the racial wealth gap, the inequalities that exist, or that we have to kind of sort of navigate. There's no better time than now when these NIL industries, the creator economy is booming, and our kids are the magnets, but they don't know how to assess their value, monetize, protect, or own their
Mm-hmm.
intellectual property, which is who they are, right? It's their humanity.
Right.
And we've never taught, particularly our kids, that your life actually matters.
Yeah.
It
Not what
has
you do, but who
value.
you are. Yes. Yeah.
If it didn't have a value, everybody wouldn't be trying to connect with it. They wouldn't have
Yeah.
proximity to it. So we have to have a different
So good.
conversation. So a lot of the conversation we're having as mothers is so that they're better equipped to have those same conversations at home.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Oh my goodness, Tawana, thank you so much. So, great girlfriends, we're tagging at League of Industry Moms. That's where you can find out information about all the upcoming events and experiences, virtual spaces, and just kind of learn more about these stories that may be untold or unheard of that you might want to honor, or you might be an industry mom who's listening who can find value in having that connected, safe space. So, and I look forward to seeing y'all at Cannes, and I look forward to seeing y'all in the vineyard
Let's
and
go. Let's go.
outside. The moms are outside. I look forward to seeing it.
The moms are outside.
Moms are
That's
outside.
going to be our tagline. The moms are outside.
All right, great girlfriends, did you enjoy this week's episode of the podcast? If so, would you please give us your amazing review on iTunes? Every single review helps another great girlfriend get plugged into the podcast and the community. Speaking of community, make sure you join our Facebook group at The Great Girlfriends, follow us on Instagram at The Great Girlfriends, and on Twitter at _great GFS. I'm Sibylla Muti, and I'm out. Peace.